So let's waste no time. Ricardo, you checked out the season 3 premiere of Star Trek Lower Decks. I
Right.
still have not started it. Just not that I don't want to see it. It's just because of time, and like I feel I just need to learn more about the world of Star Trek before I dive into that. Because I know this show. I mean, you've talked about it with the previous seasons. Have a lot of deep cuts, right? And
Right.
I have a feeling that a majority of them will just fly past my head, right? But you've been like really enjoying this show, which have me now really excited
Right.
to finally dive into this series here, right? But yeah, season 3 premiere. What was it about, and what do you think about it?
Right. So season two's finale ended on a kind of a cliffhanger, right? And what the cliffhanger was effectively was a big secret plot involving the captain being set up, causing the destruction of a alien planet, and you don't know this was happening, and the way to make it out as if, it's a big plot line, some big conspiracy against Captain Freeman, and so on, so on, and so forth. And so the entire episode is the daughter trying to clear the mother's name and figuring out a plan to do so and sort it out. And that's the entire episode. And so the entire ship, because of the finale, season two's finale, everybody's grounded. Most of them going back to Earth. The others just sort out the situation involving the captain and why. And yeah, that's pretty much the premise. And it's more of the same, right? More of the same inside baseball jokes. This entire thing relies on, this time, they do a big inside baseball reference to arguably one of the better Star Trek movies. That is Star Trek 8, First Contact. And
Oh yeah. I know First Contact is easily
First
one of the
Contact.
best Star Trek movies.
One of
like,
the, yeah,
bar
one
none.
of the more popular films as well, right? It's
Right.
even relative outsiders and newcomers are familiar with that movie. Yeah, and they get James Cromwell to come back to play his role in that movie, if you know who that is.
Wait, D. James Cromwell wasn't this?
Yeah,
This
well,
episode?
he come to voice his character's role, but what they do with it
Ah,
is is actually pretty funny and clever. But yeah, they just set up the conceit of this episode, figuring it out, and it's just Mariner having to clear her mom's name, and that's the whole conceit of the episode, and what they do with it it's pretty funny for what it is. As I said, they do a lot of decent bits. They have one very funny bit at the beginning that I don't think they'll follow up on, but the joke is the character of Boimler, played by Jack Quaid. Uh, he's basically the protagonist of a harem manga, a grape-based harem manga. That's all I'll say. And
okay.
it's a pretty funny bit for what it is, right? Because they kind of play on the whole Captain Picard conceit in that one. So so if it's known, Picard his family runs a winery, and is basically involved in grapes. So his character, apparently his family runs a grape farm, but instead of it going to become wine, it becomes raisins, right? In California somewhere, or something like that.
Ah,
It's a
uh-huh.
dumb joke. But then the
Mhm.
bit of him in the harem manga is that a set of baddies, a set of top 10 girls, working at the place and all them thirsty for him there. And he just kind of ignored them and said, yeah, why is he so incompetent? You should clearly do this, blah, blah, blah. Normal thing there. But yeah, that's
Right.
the one funny bit of the episode. The other funny bit is, again, with James Cromwell. Um, that other funny bit with James Cromwell, which is pretty good on its own, where they make a reference to the events of Star Trek First Contact and what they do with that, and I thought that was pretty clever. Other than that, it was great. It was fine. Again, it's more of the same. More inside baseball jokes, more references. They don't go anywhere with it because how the episode is resolved is kind of clever, but it makes perfect sense. I like what they did with it, to be honest. But that's about it. Nothing really special to speak of as a premiere. It didn't blow me away. It's funny, but not super funny. It is kind of funny. So that's about it. Other than that, I couldn't really say. Yeah, it's more of the same. Again, if you're a big fan of this stuff, look, it's more of the same. That's about it. Yeah, it's a decent enough premiere to start with.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear, man. So, as you're talking about premieres, I will talk about a finale kind of, but actually I would call it more of a bonus episode, right? So I'm going to talk about the new episode of The Sandman that dropped a week or so ago. It's actually like this two-part episode, basically. Well, two stories in one episode, right?
Right.
That Netflix just like decided to drop, because of the huge response, like the huge positive response that the first season of the show got, right? I actually covered the that season itself, and I remember saying in my review that I was hoping that people who were not used to who were not familiar with Neil Gaiman's comic book series would actually like gravitate to the show. And yeah, surprisingly they are. Like I like actually like a few people that I know personally like reach out to me and say, yeah, you know what I mean, like they really love the show and they haven't even read a page out of any of the comics. And I was like, wow, okay.
Right.
I thought that it would just kind of like lose people or make them feel kind of alienated. They don't know what's going on, right? But before I forget, Ricardo, did you watch? Did you get around to watching this show?
No, I did not. Didn't find time, unfortunately. But yeah,
You
everybody but me watched the show.
clearly. But yeah, I was surprised of this episode drop, right? Because I actually found out about the true IGN, right? But I was like, all right, well, whenever it happens, it happens, and it is kind of
Right.
Lost my radar for a sec, but like I finally like got to see it, right? So in a nutshell, what this episode does, right? This bonus episode does, it tells two stories that are in the first two volumes, I believe it is, of the Sandman, right? So the first one is Dream of a Thousand Cats, right? This one in particular, if you remember in my review, I talked about actually reading the first two volumes and then listening to the audiobook, which was made up of the two volumes, right? This one was one of the most unique stories because, well, it centers on cats. The story itself is centered on cats, right? And the way how the comic books shows it, right? It's well, I should say how it's adapted here. I thought made a lot of sense because, like in my head, I was telling myself, okay, I hope that they're not gonna have these cats talk, right? Like you see the mouth moving. I know they actually don't, right? They actually they actually keep their mouth closed and you hear their dialogue, right? So I guess you could call it telepathic if you wanna use that term. But yeah, it's like that, and I think it makes a lot of sense now. So the idea is that essentially when they want to make a noise or whatnot, or if they want to meow or whatever, that's when you'll open their mouth. But when they're silent and they're moving about now, it's just basically them kind of talking telepathically with other cats, and it actually makes a lot of sense, right? But that aside, now what it's about is that it centers on these two house cats. Well, one is a house cat and one is a stray, right? And they gather one night at this graveyard, I believe it is, right? It's a graveyard, yeah. And there's this old Siamese cat that's there, and she pretty much tells a story about how she pretty much learned the hard way of how cruel humanity is, right? So, and in the process of that, she kind of runs into Morpheus himself, who assumes the form of this cat, right? And he pretty much tells her about this history, but it's not exactly real, but that's all I'll say, where cats were the dominant species and humans were, subservient now. And it's just basically her just being motivated by that, even though technically, surprise, surprise, is a dream now. She more or less kind of tells these cats like, yes, one day if we dream hard enough, we could be the ruling species in the world and all that kind of stuff. And I'll stop there, right? So essentially what this is actually the first and only animated segment that we get in this entire season, right? And I would say from an animation standpoint, this is brilliant. This is very, very, very well animated. I would say in terms of the movements in particular, especially with the humans, because yes, there are human characters involved, and the cats themselves, they're so lifelike, right? To the point I was asking myself, is this rotoscoping that they use here? Like, I'm not sure what the exact animation technique is, right? It looks rotoscope, but the way how it's designed in terms of the colors and whatnot, it kind of looks like it has sort of a painting-esque kind of look to it, like a visual aesthetic to it. It's kind of hard for me to describe now, but in particular with the movements of the cats and the humans, it was just so incredibly lifelike, and that's what I was wondering if it was rotoscope or not, right? But in terms of just how they adapted this pretty weird and intriguing story, yeah, again, I have to commend, the creative team behind the show, man. Again, they are staying faithful to the source material, man. It's just so amazing, right? But again, this is the animated segment, and just the mere fact that it's animated makes a lot of sense, right? Because I mean, in comics, of course, you could get away with having, just this random issue about cats, being congregating with each other and talk about what they take over the world, so to speak, right? But here, it makes sense to make it animated, so it's not like it takes away from all the live action stuff that you saw 10 episodes prior, right? And it does tie back to what you've seen before, what you're already familiar with in terms of Morpheus and his motivations, and the idea of dreams, and how we see ourselves in dreams and all that kind of stuff. That it's a pretty dark story, of course, right? But how it's told, yeah, it totally works. And I mean, for cat lovers, I know they'll just be like just loving the cuteness of the cats and whatnot. But believe me,
Right.
this is a pretty dark story. But it has a really like I don't want to say a message, but it just has these really strong themes about, yeah, just basically how we see ourselves in the world, right? And this idea of, oh, if you dream it, if you believe in your dreams so much, they'll come true, right? I think really that's what Neil was trying to explore in this, right? And also, speaking of Neil, Neil provided a voice in this. Yeah, Neil Gaiman have a do a little voiceover in this. Like, what? Okay, okay, okay.
Nice one.
Yeah, the guy, but because I know his voice through well, one, the audiobook, and also this another audiobook that he put out quite recently, talking about this more or less the art of storytelling, right? So I'm already familiar with his voice, right? So when I heard this, like, oh, okay, okay, okay. And the character who he plays, yeah, it totally makes sense, right? So in a nutshell, animation was stellar. Voice acting, I have to mention too, is great as well. They got some great, well, some big actors for this too. Like Sandra Oh was the Siamese cat. I think David Tennant did a voice, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. Yeah, and some other people, like I was just looking through the credits. I was like, oh, I know this person, I know this person, but I don't know what voices they provided, right? Maybe I'll just go on IMDb and see what they did, right? But yeah, in terms of just adapting this story here, yeah, this was great, man. And the next story we get is Calliope, right? This is, in my opinion, one of the darkest stories in Sandman itself, right? Essentially, it just centers on this author by the name of Richard Maddock, and he's pretty much just experiencing writer's block, right? So through an old, cranky, so to speak, author, he acquires a muse, right? Like a Greek muse by the name
Right.
of Calliope, right? So if you're familiar with Greek mythology, you'll know who the character is, right? Yeah, so basically he uses her to get inspiration to write his next
Right.
story, right? But why I said this story is pretty dark is that even in the comics now, it's not so much implied, but pretty much shown that yeah, he kind of forces himself on her, and that's how he gets the inspiration to write his stories and whatnot, right? Yeah, he's a straight up asshole this way. Yeah, I mean, and it's just cruel what he does to this poor woman, right? But that's pretty much the gist of it, right? But basically, he puts out the book now, and it's like, but it's like one thing leads to the next now, and then everything just kind of backfires, right? And I'm not gonna say what happens next, but I will say that, well, Morpheus does appear in this, because yes, Morpheus is part of the story, right? Now, what I will say about this adaptation, right, compared to the comic book one, to the source material, sorry. This is a very it's just as faithful as what we've seen before, right? But I love how they actually updated it, right? Because yeah, I mean back then it was like what, in '89, right? Here they set it in roughly like about a couple of years ago, right? So basically where the story begins is where Morpheus is being trapped in, where he's still being trapped, and then he's about to set himself free, right? So
Right. Right.
it
Right.
starts at that time, right? And yeah, I mean, because it's like 2 years from now, like it's literally set in 2020, it's very contemporary. So, it's not just so case in point, like there's a moment in the source material where they was talking about adapting his new novel into like a movie, right? But in this one, you're saying, yeah, we could adapt it to film, and then we could make it, we could put it out on streaming, right? So it's those little things there. It's
Right.
really smart updating of this story, right? Also, I have to give praise for um not so much eliminating the fact that that Richard is a straight up rapist, but they don't like blatantly or explicitly show you it. They imply it, and how they do it was I felt was very very smart and very well thought out, right? Because yeah, I mean that particular reveal in the comics was pretty disturbing, right? But I have to give praise for the show for this show for at least not relying on that now to as shock value. It's
Right, right.
implied, we know what's happening, but they don't show it, right? That's the best way I could describe it. Also, slight spoiler, in the comics, Calliope is like practically naked, for a majority of the episode. In here, it's like, no, she actually has a dress on. So
Right.
it's like these little things, like it's like something you probably wouldn't think about if you're just kind of watching this blind, right? But if you're familiar with the comic itself, you're like, oh, okay, now I see. All right, I understand why they changed it up. That make a lot of sense, right? But that being said, though, acting is great. Just direction is strong, and just how they tell the story is pretty great as well, right? They do a few tweaks here or there in terms of the characters. They do another gender swap. I'm not gonna say who, and you pretty much get the point as to what the story is about, right? And yeah, it's just this idea of just being obsessed with wanting more, wanting fame and all that kind of stuff. And well, in this guy's case, is wanting to just be this guy who just has a lot of ideas, and that pretty much backfires. I'm not going to say how the beauty of the story is just kind of seeing how his life and his world deteriorates, in the moment that he kind of encounters Calliope and to extent Morpheus, right? So yeah, I mean, this was just another solid entry in this season here. I do understand why it's a bonus episode or part of a bonus episode, because yeah, I mean, because the actual first 10 episodes itself, if you look at it, kind of tells its own set of stories. And this one is kind of like a one-off story, if you will.
Right.
So it would have kind of felt out of place, kind of having this somewhere in the middle of the season, whatnot. It need to be separate, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it just kind of gives fans more of what they've loved so far. I do hope that they really do enjoy that Cats one in particular, because I know it's just so different with it being animated, right? But the other one, the Calliope one, that one would resonate because it's just as it's familiar with what people have seen before with the previous season itself, right? With the previous episodes themselves, right? So in closing, man, I would say that yeah, this was a nice this was a great, I must say, bonus episode, man. It gives the fans more and it actually takes two fairly classic stories from the Sandman comics and adapts them in just a brilliant way, man. And I won't lie to you, this show, just the more I think about it, the more I like sit on this, it slowly developing into like I have a feeling that this could actually show up in my best of listener.
Right.
The more I think about it, man, because again, it's just the effort that they put in telling these stories and adapting them in what I mean, and modifying it for modern taste. That's all I'll say, right? And yeah, they just do a stellar job, man. I mean, just across the board, man. So again, Ricardo, I recommend you really do need to check the show out, man. But in particular, check out that what I would say, don't stop at the 10th episode. You might think, all right, season done is the 10th episode, but nah, I mean, there's a new one, there's a extra episode. So yeah, I really recommend it to check that out too.
It's again, it's because I read it now, so I know it was loyal, so I didn't think I would have learned something new from it now.
Well, true.
That's all.
Yeah.
It's not knocking the show or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, it's not like a big demand. I know the story, but whoever is, I'll make the effort at a fine time.
Right. Well, at least in your case, you could see how it's adapted. At least you could look at it from that perspective, because that's how, I mean, I can't help but see it from that perspective, because yeah, already the source material before watching the show itself, right? And again, I'm just like really amazed at how well received the show is, you know what I mean? But yeah, I would say again, give it a look and just see how they were able to adapt it and whatnot, right? I still do have a little minor nitpick in terms of I just wish that the visual aesthetic of the comics were translated here, but other than that, everything else just works for me, man. So again, thank you Netflix for dropping another episode of the show. But please don't cancel this. But I'll just end with this, right? I hear into the grapevine where Neil himself not too sure if there will be future seasons of this, because I think, or because I don't really know all things Netflix. I think that the amount of viewership isn't as high as they as they had expected it to be, or something along that line. So they're not too sure what the future of the show will be, man. But I think that just because of the positive response it's been getting, I think that that's enough to warrant a second season at least, man. But I guess we'll see. But yeah, I mean, again, Sandman is great. You all need to check that out. But don't forget this bonus episode. It's great. It's fantastic.
Right.